All right, let's go. Hey, everybody, this is Chad, and we're going to be doing some deck building. I was asked by a listener of the show and a watcher of the YouTube channel for some help with a Haldir deck. So, of course, I said absolutely. I will gladly help with a Haldir deck. So, joining me is TJ. Hello, TJ.
Hey man, how's it going?
It's going great.
Yes, yes. Thanks for having me. Yeah, just like you said, I found out about the YouTube channel, found out about the game like 3 weeks ago, and I was just like, there's so much, so I need to research. So your channel was one of the first that I found. Yours and the Game Locker.
Yep, Stevens.
So
Yep.
yeah. So I've been referring my buddies to the two of you, and I was just like, I was making a deck last night, and I was just stuck. I was like, this isn't as fluid as it should be. So I was like, maybe I'll just reach out and get lucky, and yeah, so I did.
Well,
So
my
here we are.
dad always says it never hurts to ask. You know, the worst
Yeah.
someone could say is no. So I'm glad you did. I'm really glad you did. What part of the world are you from?
So from Illinois, moved to Colorado a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
My very good friend of the show and friend of mine, Autumn, also lives in Colorado.
yeah. I found her in the Discord, and yeah, she's awesome. Been
Yes, she is.
talking, asking a bunch of questions to her. So yeah,
Excellent. Well, good, good. I'm glad you found yourself this community and the channels, and this community has always been really great about helping new players and helping new folks get into the game because the more the merrier. All right. So, can you give the folks watching this your description of the type of deck you wanted to build?
yeah. So like you and I were talking off camera. I started with the Dunedain deck, mostly tactics and leadership, and I loved that. Um, but I was like, I can't just play leadership tactics every time. So I wanted to incorporate a third sphere. I didn't really like um, the blue sphere. I think it's called Spirit.
Spirit? Yep.
Yeah, I didn't really want to include that right out the gate because it really changes what you could do with the other two spheres. So I was like, maybe go into lore,
Mm-hmm.
and that might be a good, step in the right direction. So I found your video, like immediately after saying that, I found your video, and I was like, sweet, that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then I really like Haldir as a hero. I really like Celeborn, and I was like, I just need to find a good tactics hero. And I was looking, and I was on Rings DB, and I found Tactics Aowen and Tactics Aelmir, and I was like, I think Aelmir would fit my style a little more, and that'd be a little easier. So I slotted him in, and then I was just like, I want attachments, obviously, but then I ended up with too many attachments and not enough allies,
Okay.
and I didn't really know where to go from there. So
Well, that's excellent. That's great. Thank you for explaining your thought process there because what you have done is the very first step in building a deck, which is you had an idea. And
mm,
your idea was simply I want to start including lore cards and getting to
yeah,
know the lore deck, and that's great. And then your second idea was I'd like to try to build a deck with these three heroes: Celeborn, Amair, Tactics Amair, and Haldir. And that's a great place to start for deck building because it's daunting to look at everything.
oh yeah, for sure, for
And,
sure.
and so if you can narrow your scope right from the start, like I am not going to include spirit cards, which are great, by the way, for all the spirit lovers out
Oh
there.
yeah,
Spirit cards are
yeah.
great, but you are correct. It every sphere adds a new aspect, literally and also figuratively and mechanically, to the deck you're building. And if you try to include all four aspects somehow in the same deck, it just becomes a jumbled mess. And
Right.
you need to have a focus. So in a lot of my videos, when I talk about the decks I build, I include a deck building segment at the beginning of most of my videos of how I came up with the deck. There's usually a focus to the deck, some mechanic, some idea that the deck is trying to accomplish really well, in addition to just being able to handle all the aspects of the game. There's usually something extra that deck is trying to do. And if you include too many of those extra things that the deck is trying to do, none of them will work. So focus is really important for a deck. So, okay, what I have on the screen here is the Elves of Lorien starter deck. And am I correct that you have this?
I got lucky. I bought this guy's collection, and so I have everything, barring the starter decks, and some of the print on demand stuff.
Oh, really?
I have all, yeah. So I got, I'm missing the last 3 action packs of the Sands of Harad, I believe it's called.
Okay.
And I'm missing the Shadow of the East, I think.
Okay.
But that's it.
Wow. Okay, your collection's much bigger than I thought it was going to be. Being a new player, I made the incorrect assumption that you had a limited card pool. So you have the advantage of having a lot of cards.
Yeah.
Which is very daunting for a new player.
Yes.
Insanely so. Like, I have a card catalog in my mind where I can pretty much name what any card does, or if I need a card to do something, I can think of the card that would do it. You don't have that.
No.
You got to go through the list and read every ability. So that I appreciate the struggle of that. That is hard. It's very, very hard. A lot of people recommend when you start playing this game is you do some sort of progression where you introduce player cards to yourself in a staggered fashion instead of like you got this whole card pool trying to look at it as a whole. You can, it would be easiest to do it by cycle because cards are designed by cycle and they're play tested with the entire cycle available to the play testers. So that's what's great about these repackaged sets coming with the whole cycle repackaged. You get all those cards at once instead of piecemeal like I got them when they were coming out 1 pack at a time. And you're like, man, this card sucks. And then 4 packs later, oh, I see. It's actually a good card now. Okay, I got it. All right, well, that kind of changes how I'm going. I think I still might approach this from the same way. So what I was going to do is I'm going to take this Elves of Lorien starter deck and I'm going to copy it.
Okay.
And this is what I do for a lot of decks that I build is I try to find a deck that is pretty similar to the one I'm hoping to build. And then I copy it because then I don't have to go and find all the cards that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I should have done that. That would have been. I was going off of memory off of your video.
Okay.
And searching for Sylvan cards.
Yeah.
And so I was doing pretty good, but then it got to the point where I was just like, I'm looking at lore cards and the search wasn't doing what I wanted it to.
Sure.
So I'm looking at every lore card in the game. I'm
sure.
just like, my head's spinning.
Yeah. No, totally understandable. This is always a good way to start. You know, if you're wanting to build a Hobbit deck, just type in when you do a search. The deck list has a way to search. I would go to deck lists and then search. And so you want to use Haldir. You gotta make sure you get the right one. Trouble in Tharbad. And then Amair from the Voice of Isengard. And then Celeborn. If I was you, I would pick the Celeborn from the Dunland Trap, not the Celeborn from the starter deck, because there's a lot more decks using the cards from the original set they came in versus the starter deck.
Oh, okay.
Because all the decks that have been made since the Dunland Trap will include this Celeborn until this Elves of Lorien pack was released.
Okay.
So you're going to get a lot more hits this way. So let's just type in those 3 heroes. We'll hit search. There's one deck.
Yeah, that was the problem I was running into. I was like, there's no way.
And I don't recognize this user, and he only has a rep of 1, which means this is the only deck that this guy made. Not a good start. I mean, it might be great, but I mean, you know, the odds are probably not. I mean, it's not. At a quick glance, it's got some of the cards I'd include. But anyway, that's how I do my searching. So I look to see if there's, and it doesn't have to just be the heroes. Like maybe there's a couple of the cards that actually go in your deck that you really want to make sure are in the deck, and you want to use 2 heroes, and you just want to see what's out there to get some ideas. But mainly it's the copy that I like to do, because it really keeps you from having to find a bunch of cards. It's a time saver. All right, so let's go back to the Elves of Lorien deck. So right off the bat, no Galadriel and no Spirit cards.
Right.
So I'm just clicking each of these and hitting 0. And when I do that, what I like to do is see, well, how many cards did that drop me down to? So I'm at 41.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's just, to me, that's just like an interesting metric. Like, all right, I just removed 9 cards. All right. Okay. So at the very least, I need to add 9, but I'm probably adding a lot more. All right, let's add.
You still have Ninja in the deck too. So.
Oh yeah, good point. Yep. And you know what? That's the type of card that I wouldn't realize is in the deck until I'm about 10 minutes into building. I'm like, wait, I don't need that. What the heck? You know? Okay, so you said you want to use these 3 heroes. So my heroes, when I look at heroes, I look at what's my starting threat. It's 30. Not good, not great. Or I'm sorry, not bad, not great. Right in that sweet spot for Journey Along the Anduin. A little on the high side, but not terrible.
Yeah.
Not the worst. You got Celeborn, who is a good quester, and then he's got the 2/2, which is nice. You got Amair, he's an attacker.
Yeah.
You got Haldir, he's an attacker. And so what I want to say right off the start, and I don't mean any offense by this at all, is when you said Haldir and Amair, my initial thought was, well, I bet you there's not a lot of decks that use those 2 heroes together. And we just proved that. Because this is a very attacky deck. So from a solo deck perspective, this is going to be tough. Not impossible, but it's going to be tough. Now, if you were playing two-handed or with a friend, and they were running a spirit leadership deck, I would probably assume, that's going to focus on questing, this would actually probably be a lot of fun.
Yep, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I have 2 buddies that play. One of them is he uses spirit and lore. The other a combination. So yeah, I wanted to be the attack deck, but I also wanted some lore cards to help with questing, because I didn't want to just only do attack.
A good rule of thumb is you should be able to cover your own encounter card that's being revealed as far as willpower to threat. So you should hopefully be able to quest for 3 or 4 every round. Yeah. At least cover your card, and then count on another deck to make the actual progress. Okay, so there is a problem with these 2 heroes, and the first problem is, oh wait, hold on, I don't want to say that. Whoa. I was not about to say there's a problem with Haldir. There is nothing wrong with Haldir. He has no problems. The great thing about Haldir is that his ability triggers when you don't engage an enemy. Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to say this correctly. The problem with Amair is he wants you to be engaged with an enemy if you put Firefoot on him, which I'm assuming you were thinking of doing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Right. The great thing about Amair, though, is then after a character leaves play, he gets his attack bonus. And if you're playing a Sylvan deck, they're leaving all the time, which is why I'm assuming you thought of Amair.
Yes.
Yep. That makes total sense. He's not ranged, though.
Right.
And that's where the Haldir and the Amair don't synergize great. But if you're thinking of this as a multiplayer deck, then it is totally likely you're going to get engaged with an enemy. It just has a great chance of happening. And then Amair could help attack. But I'm tempted to say,
Don't say it.
You might be better off with a tactics hero that is also ranged as well as Haldir.
I knew you were gonna say it. So my thing was, you are right, but there were a few attachments that make a character ranged, and I was wondering if that was enough of an offset to make this work.
So that is the Dunedain Cash? Yes, look at me. So Dunedain Cash will make him ranged. And I have built a deck that made Amair ranged and put Firefoot on him, with the goal being he does his ranged attack to kill something, and then he tramples the enemy that you were engaged with.
Right.
And if you
Right,
and if you put that in combination with Quick Strike, you can kill 2 enemies. It's really fun.
Yes.
That's not bad. So yeah, sure, let's do it. So Dunedain Cash is one. What? Bow of You? Is that the other one you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bow. I think there were 2 or 3.
No, not Bow of You. Great U Bow.
No, there were
Great.
2. Yes, yeah. There were 2 or 3 tactics cards that I just saw from glancing last night that gave ranged, and the bonuses were enough to where I thought it was worth it.
Okay. We could
Well,
put a great big white beard on Amair and then put Shadowfax on him.
If only.
Let me see if this works. Oh, this does work. The Keen Longbow, but that only goes on a lore hero. Ooh, is Amair a warrior?
Yes.
He is.
Yeah.
So we got the Tireless Thoroughbred. Do you have the Fortress of Nirn?
Yeah.
Okay. Attached to a warrior, he gains ranged and sentinel. It's not bad, and that's it. Okay, so I remembered basically 2 of the 3. Okay. Tireless Thoroughbred. That was the last one. Came in the very last pack of the game. That's my excuse for not remembering it. It's the newest card.
Yep. Valid excuse, yeah.
Okay. All right, so the idea here is to give Amair ranged, and then, of course, Firefoot to give him his trampling ability. We might want to add. We're at 50. All right, we're done. No, I'm kidding. All right. So what I like to do when I deck build is I just start throwing a whole bunch of cards in the deck that I think I'm going to want. So, for example, the Bow of the Galadriel on Haldir. Just makes sense.
Right.
+2 when you're attacking an enemy not engaged with you. Hands Upon the Bow. So it's a 1-cost event.
Yes.
You can play it in any action window, and the character has to be ranged, and you can attack into the staging area with +1. So what's great is if you can get the combo to trigger, and this is why I said I think it's going to be a fun deck, is if you can use Hands Upon the Bow with a ranged Amair to kill something in staging and trample something you're currently engaged with. I mean, how cool would that be?
Really? Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to do, but not impossible. So we're already at 56, and there's a lot of cards we're going to want to be messing around with, because I know you want to do the Sylvan bouncing thing. So we have Feigned Voices, Host of Galadriel, and the Tree People. I would definitely add a third Tree People. The Tree People is amazing. And since you've included tactics in this deck, I think we're going to want some tactics Sylvans. The Galadan Archer is great. After he enters play, deal 1 damage to an enemy not engaged with you, which, if you're playing multiplayer, is, it could trigger up into the staging. It could trigger to 1 engage with somebody else. I would also include Pursuing the Enemy, which came in the starter deck, which is return a Sylvan ally you control to your hand. Choose a player, deal 1 damage to each enemy engaged with that player. It's just a great card to yank a Sylvan back into your hand. So if you're gonna include 2 heroes, one benefiting from characters entering play, one benefiting from characters leaving play, you got to make sure you have enough events actually doing that.
Right.
And so that's when the balancing really starts coming in. And we'll get to that in a minute, but I like to just keep throwing all the cards into the deck just so I can see them and look at the numbers. Okay, 16 events, 22 attachments, 25 allies, and then I look at the curves, go to the charts, and I look at the cost curve, you know. Okay, most of my cards are costing 2. That's good. You know, that's where you'd like to be. You definitely don't want to be 3 and higher as most of your cards, especially in a tri-sphere deck.
Right.
Where it's harder. Okay, the one card we don't have in here that I think we should add is Ally Legolas, which a lot of people got with the Saga expansion.
Okay.
Because if you can play the Tree People and then Ally Legolas is in your top 5, I mean, what a great find that is.
Yeah.
I mean, you play a Henemarth and then you play the Tree People and you swap Henemarth for Legolas. Oh my gosh. I mean, you're winning. I do not, when I build decks, I do not like to include multiples of unique characters unless it's, I guess I should say unique cards, unless they are very important to the deck. And Orofin is not very important to this deck. He's unique because he has that little unique symbol next to his the first O in his name. Yeah. He's a great ally, but you don't want him in play and then you draw another Orofin. That sucks.
Right.
Now,
so sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, go ahead.
With that, because I was watching your vids, I know that you're highly against multiples of unique allies, but I'm thinking in a multiplayer game that may go the distance and even more. Wouldn't it be worth if I'm, especially with like a card like Faux Hammer?
Yeah.
If I'm drawing that many cards, is it that bad? If I have 2 of, say, Orphan, if I'm, drawing extra cards that I wouldn't otherwise be drawing.
It definitely lessens the pain of drawing a second copy of a card you can't play. And if you have a copy of a unique ally in your hand, and then you get in a situation where a character has to leave play, either through an attack or some sort of treachery, then it's like, well, okay, I can just play the copy that I have in my hand.
Yeah.
After this one leaves play. So it's not the worst, but I still think, because we're at 63 cards.
Right.
I still think holding on in your deck build to additional copies of non-essential unique cards when you're trying to cut, like right now, there's still some cards we haven't added. And we have to cut 13 already. So, like, Henemarth in a multiplayer game isn't good. In solo, he's amazing because you're only revealing 1 card. But in a multiplayer game, you're revealing, it sounds like you're revealing 3.
Yeah, yep.
So he's another one where I'd say just make him a 1-of because he's just a 1-cost Sylvan that triggers all this stuff, all these events, and Amair. And the sideboard becomes important, right? Like maybe put 2 copies of Henemarth in your sideboard. So if you ever do play this solo, which again I don't recommend based on the heroes, but then you can start swapping out other cards for more Henemarths. Because in solo he's worth 3 copies in solo.
Yes.
Knowing what you're questing against, come on, that's amazing.
It is.
So
so there was a leadership card. I'm happy that I'm talking to you, so you'll probably know right off that. But it wasn't Celeborn, but it was like something of the king or king's orders or something.
Oh, the Elven King. Here it is.
Yes.
Okay. You were close. You said the King of the Elves or something like that. That was
a
lot closer than I got. All right. Exhaust the Elven King, return a Sylvan ally you control to your hand to ready the attached hero. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So,
So, yeah.
uh,
Sorry.
no,
Go ahead.
that's okay. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say. So, is it possible to attack with Aomir and oh, well, I said Sylvan here anyway. So, is it possible to attack with, say, Haldir and then exhaust it to ready him and attack again?
Yes,
Okay.
just not against the same enemy.
Okay. Awesome.
Unless, because he's ranged, you are joining in on an attack against that same enemy that was declared by another player.
All right.
So, for example, if you're player one, you can declare, you, the player, declare Haldir an attacker against an enemy engaged with somebody else. Okay?
Yep. Yep.
And then, even though the Elven King could ready him right back up, you couldn't declare him an attacker again against that enemy. But when it becomes that player's turn, if they have characters attacking that enemy, they are the ones that have declared the attack. You, because you are ranged and ready, can join in. Because the rules say characters cannot be declared as attackers against the same enemy. But joining in with a ranged attack is different than declaring yourself as the attacker. The other player could even declare an attack with somebody with no attack power. Like they could have, I don't know. So does anyone here not have attack power? The minstrel. They could have the minstrel ready and say, all right, my minstrel's attacking this guy. And you're like, cool, I'll join in with Haldir. And you could swing at him again. So that's what makes range really powerful.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm like trying to metagame too hard, but I was like, it'd be awesome if that was the case.
Yep. And you could ready him and declare him an attacker against a second enemy that you're engaged with, or your first attack is against an enemy engaged with somebody else. He readies, now he's attacking somebody that's engaged with a different enemy, basically a different eligible enemy. You just can't declare him as the attacker against the same enemy, but joining in with ranged is fine.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yes, very fun. Okay, yeah, so you had mentioned Faux Hammer, which I think is a great card. Very powerful. We're at 67. Probably should start looking at what we want to get rid of here.
Yeah. I think Limbus, right? Because it's an attack-heavy deck, not necessarily a Healy deck.
But it readies.
Yeah, I know, but
and you can attach it to anybody's hero.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
No, it's not. But I know for a fact my buddy's support deck has Limbus in it.
Well, there you go. So that's a good reason to not include it. If you think someone else has the healing.
Yeah.
So one of the things you want to look at is if we're going to include a card like Faux Hammer, which is dependent upon the hero having a weapon and doing the killing.
Yeah.
I would say you want at least 7 weapons in your deck. You don't want to be drawing Faux Hammers and having no weapons. Now, the more card draw you have, the easier it is to say you need 7 or less. If you don't have a lot of card draw besides Faux Hammer, like if you're not running lore, then you really want 7, maybe even 8 weapons, just to guarantee you get a weapon in your opening hand or first turn at least.
Right.
But you also have Darwins Runes. The Tree People is pseudo card draw because it's getting cards out of your deck. You have Gandalf, maybe. We haven't decided if we're keeping Gandalf. So you got a lot of card draw here.
Yeah.
But weapons, we have 3 bows of the Gladrium at the moment. 3 bows, and that's it. And to be honest, I don't really like the bow.
Me either.
Because it's restricted, but it's not giving you an attack boost.
Yeah, and those restricted slots are precious, so yeah.
Yep. So let's just throw that in the sideboard. Well, now we're down to 3 weapons. And this is not a combo I would say is a good one. 3 Faux Hammers and 3 weapons. So we either need to say, all right, forget it, we're not going to do Faux Hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Or we need to put more weapons in the deck. In which case, then we'll have to be dropping cards. More cards. And we still have to drop 12.
Okay. Right.
So what do you think?
Do you think it's worth adding weapons, or do you think we can still do what we want to do with the deck without weapons?
I think the goal of your deck is an attack deck, and you want Haldir to kill enemies in the staging area in one attack, or you want him to snipe enemies engaged with other players in one attack. So I say we want Haldir to hold 2 weapons.
Okay.
And so I think we need to add some.
Okay.
So we're going to click tactics, attachments, and then K : weapon. And it just brings them all up like that.
Okay.
We got the Blade of Gondolin, which can go on anybody, but it only gets a boost against an orc. If you're playing against an orc heavy quest, okay, great. The Dagger of Western is great. +1/+2 if the enemy has a higher engagement. That might not always trigger with a starting threat of 30, but it's always a +1, and it just costs 1. We got a bunch of dwarf stuff. The Spear, discarding cards. It's decent.
Oh, how about the Rivendell Blade? That was one of the first that came to mind when I was looking.
Yep. I totally agree. The Rivendell Blade is amazing. Haldir is, Sylvan, so he can hold on to it. It's almost always going to trigger to its maximum effect of -2. Most enemies have at least 2 defense, and it only costs 1. So it's an absolutely great card. So now we have 6 weapons, and I think it'd be nice to add a couple more. And I think the Warrior Sword, because it goes on a tactics or warrior character, it can't go on Haldir, but it can go on Amair. And that's why when I'm saying 7, this is the one I would make my 7th.
Okay.
Because it can't go on Haldir, so it's a little more restricted. Get it?
Haha, funny.
Okay, now the problem is the Tireless Thoroughbred and Firefoot are also restricted.
Right.
And Amair can't hold on to either of the other 2 weapons. So if Amair does any killing, Faux Hammer doesn't trigger unless he's got the Warrior Sword. And this is where we start running into the problem of running a Rohan hero and a Sylvan hero and then trying to put weapons in. This is where we start running into the deck building issue where you're like, uh-oh, wait a minute. Is my idea good? Is this going to work?
Yeah. So just real quick thought process. I know we're focusing on Eomer and Haldir, but we do have Legolas as well that can get weapons and he'll be around. Is that enough? Is a third target enough to warrant these weapons, or?
You mean as the ally here?
Yeah. Because he's Sylvan and warrior. So.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you want to put, I thought you were going to say, should we swap out Eomer for Tactics Legolas Hero?
We could, but then I know from watching video, you said it was redundant because
in a solo deck. In a solo deck, it's redundant.
Okay.
In a solo deck, it's redundant. But in a multiplayer deck, and if we did that same search for Celeborn, Legolas, Haldir, I know we'd get lots of hits because it's fun. It's a really fun deck. But you wanted to do this, and I think we should try to make this work. I think that's the fun of this game, is trying to make it work. So right now we have 6 cards in the deck to make Amair ranged. And I keep thinking, like, how important is it that he becomes ranged?
That was my next point. I don't think it is. I think it takes away from the synergy of the deck. So, because when I was building this idea, I was like, yeah, sniping with Haldir is awesome, but with a starting threat of 30, it's not always going to be possible. And because I'm not running Spirit, I won't be able to lower my threat consistently like you were in your video. So maybe it's just a matter of getting a good enough board state with all these Sylvans and, then attacking whatever comes out and then just refreshing and just, you know, having those bonuses proc often. I
Yeah.
wonder if that is a better plan.
I like what you're saying. So this is, you know, you got to keep thinking it's a multiplayer deck, right? So what are you bringing to the table? You're bringing Haldir to help kill enemies engaged with other players, probably the questing guy. He's probably not able to kill things. He should be able to hopefully defend a little bit, but even if he can't, you could snipe the enemy with Haldir. So that is a great benefit to bring to the table. Shocker, Chad's praising Haldir. Okay. But as you said, you want to be able to kill enemies that you're engaged with. And that's where having Amair is going to be nice, because he should be able to kill anything you got engaged with. And even if Haldir can't snipe because you had to engage the enemy, he's still going to be able to do his ranged attack across the table. What you don't want to happen is build a deck for a multiplayer game where if you ever get engaged with an enemy, oh, sorry, Haldir can't help any of you guys this turn. He has to kill the enemy I'm engaged with.
Right.
If you're the attacking deck, you should have one character that's ranged and one character that can deal with any enemies that you got engaged with. So you're still helping your friends because they're helping you with the questing. And you can still deal with the enemies engaged with yourself. So I think we drop the let's make Amair ranged thing. If we wanted to, we add one Dunedain Cache. And this is where on the show, a lot of times we talk about one-ofs.
Yeah.
And I think this would be the perfect one-of. I mean, if he becomes ranged, okay, he becomes ranged. Great. Does he have to be? No. He doesn't have to be ranged. But if he is, well, that's fun. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that got rid of 5 cards, so that helped.
So we're 61. So, yeah.
No, go ahead. I want to hear what you were going to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was saying, I'm just looking at the deck. We have a lot of lore cards. How much, this is another thing that I was struggling with. How much lore presence do we need in the deck? Like, I know we need leadership. That's just a given. And I know we need tactics because of the hero that we chose. But how much... I know we need the tree people.
Yep. Which is free.
Yeah. But you know, we have to have a lore hero to play it.
Correct.
I know we need Darwins Runes.
Yep. Which should be a 3 of, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm assuming we need the minstrel. But outside of that, do we need more lore, or do we need less?
So I'll answer it like an elf. Yes and no. Okay. The reason being, it's based on the cost. So Darwins Runes and the Tree People are both free. So when you draw them, you can play them. You don't have to have a resource sitting on Haldir. So when you're playing a tri-sphere deck, it's really important to look at not only the number of each sphere's card. I don't know if I said that right, but if you go to the spheres, here we have 16 lore, 16 leadership, 23 tactics. That's very even because we also have 7 neutral. And 7 plus 16 is 23. So it's really balanced right now. Between, if you include the neutrals with the lore, since a lot of the lore cards are free, that pretty much any card you draw, you should be able to pay for relatively quickly from when you bought it, from when you drew it. Okay. And so then the number of each doesn't matter as much. What you don't want is a situation where, like, looking at Rumiel, he costs 4. Yeah. Okay. And you don't want a handful of Rumiels and Legolases with only one tactics hero, and you're also trying to pay for tactics attachments. They're just going to sit in your hand. But the lore cards are free that you actually want to play. Darwins Runes and Tree People. So it's okay if the lore allies cost more than 2. Like the Mirkwood Runner is 3. The Sylvan Tracker's 3. That's fine. Haldir should be kind of piling up the resources And if you
Right.
get Olorian in play, it's even cheaper to play those. But
Yeah.
what you're hoping will happen is you can use Olorian to pay for maybe one of the leadership cards because you were planning on playing, I don't know. Actually, this is actually just a low-cost deck in general. I guess that's what I want to say here is Sylvan decks are low-cost decks, so it's normally you're like, don't include too many 3-cost or 4-cost cards in a Trisphere deck, but because everything else is so cheap, and you could probably pop these in for free with the tree people, that advice kind of goes out the window a little bit.
Yeah.
This is really, I mean, look at the cost curve now. 0, 15, 1 cost 18, 2 cost 16. That's almost the whole deck at this point.
Yeah.
Which means almost every card you draw, you should be able to play within 1 turn of drawing it, which is really good.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. It's cost dependent.
Yeah, it definitely did. I was just because on one hand, I'm sure he'll be piling up the resources because he has a job to do, and he's going to do it well. But I didn't know if it was going to be taking away from, like, say, any Sylvan characters that were leadership.
Yeah, nope, makes sense.
So, yeah.
All right, so we still have to cut 12 cards.
Yes.
Now, there's always that. Chris likes to say Darwins Runes, basically you can run a 53 card deck because it replaces itself. And then I always counter with, that's very true, and he's right. But when you're also running cards where you're hoping to find certain cards in your top 5, Darwins Runes can become a negative because if Darwins Runes is in that top 5 instead of what you're looking for, it worked against you a bit. Yeah. So I still like to get down to 50 if at all possible, and the first 2 cards I'm looking at get rid of is Wingfoot.
I was gonna say that too. I didn't know if it was dumb, but yeah, I was gonna say that as well.
Wingfoot's a great card. It goes on Haldir, but to me it's a solo card where you need more action advantage out of your characters because you're doing everything by yourself. But in a 3-player game, Wingfoot is not as important, especially because we might not have Henamarth in play, which will guarantee Wingfoot will trigger by you don't have to guess what the card is that's being revealed. Of course, the flip side is if you're playing a 3-player game, you can pretty much always guess right because you're revealing 3 cards. So it's just, but I don't think you need to ready Haldir. Haldir shouldn't have to go questing. Actually, what you're hoping is he's ready. So you can do Hands Upon the Bow. But just a general thing about if you're running a Hands Upon the Bow deck and you're also running Wingfoot, you always say enemy. Because then the enemy will ready via the Wingfoot, will ready the character, and then Hands Upon the Bow you can use to kill it. So, it's if it's not an enemy, well, you probably didn't need to ready Haldir anyway, because if it was just a location, you have nothing to kill. Just a general strategy tip there.
Oh, that's great. So I know we just took some cards out, so you're gonna hate me because I'm undermining a bit, but I had 2 cards in mind.
Yes. What are they?
So Steward of Gondor, I was thinking, what if we put that on Amair to ramp up his tactics resources, because we are gonna have quite a few, and then Rohan Rohan Warhorse, I think it's called. I was wondering how worth it is it to have multiple ways to ready Amair, because I know we have some ways to ready Haldir to just get multiple attacks off. If you thought that was worth it, or if I'm overthinking this.
Let's see. So how are we readying? Oh, if he gets the Elven King, that's how Haldir might ready? I see. Okay. Yeah. I was actually thinking the Elven King would go on Celeborn, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, great suggestions, and I'm glad you brought both of these cards up, because this is something that I think when I first started deck building, I struggled with as well. So let's talk about Steward. Your suggestion was put it on Amair to help pay for the tactics cards.
Yeah.
Pursuing the enemy is free. Faux Hammer is free. Hands upon the bow only cost 1.
Yeah.
All the weapons only cost 1. Firefoot costs 2. I'm just going through them. The archer hopefully only costs 1, maybe 2 if we don't have Olorian. And then, of course, Legolas we're hoping to get in for free, but if we draw him, it'd be nice to pay for him. So the question becomes, do I have enough costs to justify the need for Steward of Gondor?
And the reason why I brought it up was because I was thinking if Rumiel was worth adding in.
Sure.
That was the main.
And he's a fun card. He's really powerful. So let's throw at least he's unique. So I'm doing my thing where I just put 1 in.
Yeah, just one, yeah.
Okay, so you have Steward of Gondor, and you have Olorian.
Yeah.
Your most expensive tactics cards are allies, which Olorian will reduce the cost by 1 if it's the first one you play, of the next one you play after you exhaust it.
Right.
Personally, I don't think you need Steward.
Okay.
I think the deck will work just fine without it. Will Steward make the deck better? Yes, of course. It's. Yeah. I mean, but that is true for any deck.
Right.
It really, really is. Since this is a multiplayer deck, my question to you is, do you want to run Steward in this deck to give to somebody else?
That was another part of it. But I from deck building in other games, I know that it's important to not become a slave to your own ambition. So I didn't want to put too much on the deck.
Uh-huh.
But having multiple outs was something that I wanted. I feel like we're on that track here, but then I don't want to overextend my reach.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I would put it in the sideboard, and what I would do is if you play this deck and you start testing it, and this is just general advice for any card, and if you want to see if you need it, well, if you're playing this deck and during your testing of it or whatever, you're constantly holding on to 1,000,000 cards and you never can afford any of them, then yeah, you probably need Steward in the deck. But if you're putting cards on the table every turn and the deck's working just fine, then no, you didn't need it. So it's always good to actually play the deck and see and kind of mentally keep track of the cards you've put in the sideboard to see if you actually need them. Like, God, you know what I really need is more resources. Okay, well then yeah, put that in there. You needed it.
Good.
But I don't think we need to. And again, it's based on this cost curve that I'm looking at here.
Alrighty.
If the top of the curve was shifted between the 2 and the 3, yeah, you probably need more resource acceleration than just Olorian.
Right. Okay. And then so then my next question before we move on, sorry. So how many weapon/attachments do you think we need for, because they're mainly going to go on Amair, Haldir, and Legolas, I'm assuming. So how many attachments would be a good mix for 3 targets?
Yeah, great question. It depends. Yay. Okay. It depends on what the attachments is doing, but it also depends on what you want the rest of the deck to do. And right now we have 25 allies, and we definitely want allies coming and going, and we definitely want the tree people to always hit. The worst thing that could happen is you look at the top 5 cards and there's no Sylvans.
Right.
And so 25, I think, is the minimum of where you'd want to be. But unfortunately, 2 of those allies are Gandalf. So it's really only 23. So I think we're a little light on the Sylvan allies.
Yeah.
And
so then we take Gandalf out because we don't have sneak attack in, right? And judging by the low cost and whatnot, I don't think we need it.
I don't think we need Gandalf either.
Okay.
I really don't. I've built lots of Sylvan decks, and I never include. I shouldn't say never. I rarely include Gandalf in them. If I do, it's because the quest really has a reason for me to. Now that does get rid of our only threat reduction.
Right. But I mean, only 2 of, I think.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. Yeah.
Yep. So now I think we're light on allies, and I think we're heavy on events.
Agreed.
The Host of Galadriel is an incredibly fun card.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a one of. I mean, how often do you actually need to trigger this card before it just becomes, win more?
Right.
And the Minstrel helps you find events. So odds are you're going to find the Host of Galadriel with the Minstrel. And then you just keep it in your hand for an absolutely crazy, fun, amazing turn. But I like to drop that one down to 1.
Okay.
Just to play it once, and it's really cool. You really don't need to play it twice. I mean, at that point, it's like, you're still not winning?
Right.
Whoa, okay. Now, solo, you probably want more than one. But in multiplayer, sure. Other people are doing all kinds of crazy, fun stuff. Okay, we're still 10 cards heavy. So let's look. We got our Feigned Voices, which stops an attack from happening. We got Card Draw. We have the Hands Upon the Bow. We have the Pursuing the Enemy, which is just another way to yank a character back. And it does 1 damage to each enemy engaged with a player. Great card. But what I'm looking at is Pursuing the Enemy is normally a card that usually is in the deck because I just want a way to pull a Sylvan back into my hand.
Right.
The effect of it is nice, but not the main reason I'm playing it. You also have the Elven King, which does exactly the same thing that I like to put Pursuing the Enemy in my deck for.
Yeah, and Elven King is always there where Pursuing the Enemy just happens right there.
Yes. And just because we're at 60 cards, I'm tempted to drop that down to none. And hope that we draw the Elven King.
Yeah. Is it worth... I know we can't go 3 on the Elven King. I was going to say, hey, let's go 3, but no, we can't.
Well, we can. I mean,
well, yeah, but
nothing's stopping us. It's unique,
right?
Right, but if we think it's going to be really important, we're going to want to find it. I have one more trick that we haven't talked about yet, but I want to see what else we can get rid of. So sometimes Feigned Voices I only run 2 of if I'm in this situation where I'm trying to drop cards. But what I still... And this is where the Amair Haldir thing is a little bit of a problem, is the Warrior Sword and the Warhorse and Firefoot are for one hero, and the other weapons are for the other hero, where if they both were Sylvans,
right,
they could hold either.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they could hold, all the Sylvan toys, and then we wouldn't have to include the Rohan toys. But I still think this deck could work. But that is why people tend to build trait decks where all their heroes have the same trait, because then they can hold on to everything you put in the deck.
Mm-hmm. I got you.
Doesn't mean this deck won't work. That's just the problem we're running into.
Yeah. Do we need the Warrior Sword?
No, not really.
Because we're not. It's not like a Dundane deck. Like, we're not wanting to be engaged and stay engaged. We're wanting to kill.
Yep, and
kill and ready and.
Right, and if a character leaves play, Amair is attacking for 5, and if he has Firefoot, he's attacking for 7, which is fine. Yeah. That is plenty. So yeah, we can drop the Warrior Sword. The one card I was thinking we don't have in here is Master of the Forge, which could help you find your attachments.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, he's Noldor, which is too bad, because he can't be found with tree people, but he helps you dig out your attachments. So one of the tricks I like to do is if I include 3 copies of Master of the Forge, I'm most likely finding it, and that makes it a lot easier to find my attachments, so then I can drop down copies of uniques.
Okay.
So I think Olorian we're definitely going to want 3 of, but you can drop down to 2 Firefoot, 2 Elven King, maybe 1 Warhorse. And if we have 3 Masters of the Forge, you're going to, once you get them in play, every round you're looking at the top 5 cards for an attachment. And you just, I guess you just got to trust my experience. You find them. You definitely find them. This 3 Master of the Forge allows you to reduce the number of attachments you put in your deck. And it actually makes it so you find them even faster than if you had more attachments.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm with you on that for sure.
Okay. So defense is going to be tricky with this deck. You're really relying on your Feigned Voices and maybe Defender of the Nath, or you just chump.
Yeah, I was thinking if we can, the perfect storm for the deck is build a good board state because everything's low cost and Celeborn's adding bonuses when they first come in. We do have some bounce tactics and I guess kill before we have to engage a ton.
Yep.
And then we're gonna have to sacrifice some, but we have so many that we should have good targets for sacrificing. Is what I was thinking.
Yep.
On top of having Legolas, he's also going to be tech. So yeah, that was the plan anyway.
Yep. Yeah. So 57. This is where it gets tough.
Yeah, because a lot of these cards are good.
A lot of them are very good. So I kind of look at, all right, I got the tree people. I want to have around 25 targets, and right now I have 23 because Master of the Forge doesn't count. So I really can't cut any more allies.
How important is Sylvan Tracker? I know we can't cut allies, but just for sake of...
If you're playing a quest of archery, he's amazing.
Okay.
He's amazing. The Mirkwood Runner is probably less important.
That was the one. That was the one. Sorry. Yeah.
But remember, if we start cutting allies, which let's just cut it. I still think Tree People will hit, but we're really on the cusp of whiffing on a Tree People, which is just a absolutely feel bad moment.
So with Master of the Forge, I guess would he help hit with the Tree People more often just because if we're searching that much, and then we're constantly reshuffling, wouldn't that increase the odds of Tree People hitting?
Yes, assuming you get the Master of the Forge in play. He's thinning your deck from attachments, which helps the Tree People. The Gladrium Minstrels are thinning your deck from events, which helps the Tree People. So, assuming this deck runs right, it should do just fine. We're really just at the point where, boy, it'd be nice just to cut a few more cards, just a couple more. And this is where card draw ends up getting cut. And I'm actually thinking...
I was worried about that.
I was actually thinking either one copy of Faux Hammer and one copy of Hands Upon the Bow.
And the bow?
Or we drop the Elven...
No. Yeah, we should.
Or...
I don't want to, but we should.
And this is where one ofs just never make it in the deck because it'd be like, just get rid of that Duoden Cash. Yeah, we don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
At 55 cards, you could be playing the deck and just seeing what cards you're drawing and wishing you weren't drawing them.
Yeah, but that's pain that I want to avoid because I know it's going to happen. So, let's...
Sometimes you can't, though. I mean, sometimes you really can't. You have to actually play the deck to see what don't I need in it.
Yeah, but there's so much synergy. Like, I feel like going with 55, you're, like, sapping the strength of the deck.
Yep.
Like, because it's a pretty well-oiled machine. We just gotta cut the chaff. Having Aomir range would be amazing, but it's not gonna be the reason why we lose, I think.
Right. So here's my one thought is not Feigned Voices, wrong one. Faux Hammer drops to a 2, Hands Upon the Bow drops to a 2, which puts us at 53, and we have Darwins Runes.
Yeah.
And I think this would work. Dropping Faux Hammer hurts, but between Darwins Runes, the Tree People, the Minstrel, the Master of the Forge, I think we're okay losing one of the Faux Hammers. That is the only card in this deck that the card draw is dependent upon another card being in play.
Right.
So that's why if you're going to cut card draw, cut the card draw that's the hardest to pull off.
Okay.
And then dropping a Hands Upon the Bow is painful, but it's not an essential card because if you're playing multiplayer, you just if you can't shoot it out of the staging area, you just let somebody else optionally engage the enemy, and then you kill it before it attacks. So you basically get the same benefit. The best part about Hands Upon the Bow is it helps you quest because it just removes the threat from the staging area after the enemy's revealed.
Right.
And totally. If the enemy says it makes an immediate attack, well, the action window opens up after you deal that enemy a shadow card, and you can play Hands Upon the Bow and just kill it before it attacks anybody from the staging area if it gets revealed and says makes an immediate attack. So that's where the quest matters. I mean, I've played quests where the enemy, this quest has an enemy that makes an immediate attack when it's revealed. I'm going to run a ranged character and put 3 copies of Hands Upon the Bow in my deck. I mean, my hope is I can just kill that thing so I don't have to get attacked twice, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So if that's the quest you guys are playing, then that's when you start, all right, let me put some different tech in my deck here. I'm going to do some quest-specific teching.
Okay. So another question. How important is it, like I said, I've only played the one tactics deck, and I had 3 quick strikes in my Doomsday deck. Is quick strike like a must for tactics decks, or is it just
quick strike is an action where you get to declare an attack against an eligible enemy with one character. And it's an amazing card. I include it in a lot of my decks, but I play a lot of solo. So I would say it's more important solo because in solo you have to defend and attack every enemy. So just being able to straight up attack and kill it, it saves you an action. I think in multiplayer, it becomes less good, but remember, it's starting at such a high value. Like it starts at like a 10, right? And it's like, well, in multiplayer it's an 8. Well, 8 is still really good. So it really comes down to the reason I like Haldir so much is because he's basically quick strike.
Right. Okay.
His ability is quick strike. Kill the enemy before it attacks. That's what quick strike does. So in a Haldir deck, it's much less important than it would be in a deck. Now, if you were running like Celeborn and then 2 tactics heroes, then quick strike would be and both of those tactics heroes were ranged or something, or one was ranged and one wasn't. Quick strike is almost like a no-brainer.
Auto include,
because you're just like, well, let me just kill that enemy you just engaged because I'm ranged, so that's eligible, and but like I said,
based off what
Haldir is
then based off of what you said, so then because Haldir, I guess snare isn't as important either.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, you got to get your Dunedain mindset turned off for a second.
I know. Well, snare wasn't in my Dunedain because I didn't run lore.
Okay, right. So good in a Dunedain deck.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I'm just trying to piece together for a future. Okay.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is, is snare important? It's like, well, do you have a way to handle what you normally would snare? And the answer is, I have feigned voices. I have a big attacker. I have chumps. I should be able to kill any enemy that engages me at least in 2 turns, or at the most in 2 turns. You know, like you should have a pretty. You know, Celeborn's amazing, boosting everyone's attack the round they come in play. And if you get a Greenwood Archer in play, you know, it's like, oh, well, that's awesome, you know? Yeah. And, like, if the tree people finds the Greenwood Archer, that readies Celeborn, and so he's 2, and the Greenwood Archer is 3, and Amair's probably ready. It's like, well, what enemy didn't you just kill? I mean, is it, you know, is it the Belrog? Like, what's going on here? That, you know, you shouldn't have to worry about enemies sticking around.
Awesome. Okay.
So at this point, I would try the deck, and what I'd be paying attention to is how important is Master of the Forge. If you find that you're just finding your attachments without needing the Master of the Forge, then I would drop it. I would add back the Faux Hammer and the Hands Upon the Bow, and probably another attachment. Like, if you're just finding them anyway because there's enough card draw and thinning of the deck happening, or maybe another ally could come in. This Master of the Forge is probably the card I'd be paying attention to if I needed it or not.
Okay. And I assume the same goes for the cash.
The cash, I think, you know, you and I both know it's not needed, but man, that would be fun.
Yes.
I would, awesome. And I love putting a card in my deck or cards just because I wanted to have fun with it, just because I thought it would be cool. I mean, that's why this is a lifestyle game. It's why I keep playing it. Is check this out. This is ridiculous, you know? And it's like, you know, it happens once in every 7 games, but how cool is that? You know, you know, that's the high five moments and stuff, and the reason we play.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I took a picture of the deck.
I can I can share it with you too.
Yeah. Please.
Actually, I'll probably just publish it, just because, you know, people watching the video might want to try and see what they think of Master of the Forge. So I guess to the folks watching, you know, if you try this deck, that's what I would pay attention to. And also, you know, TJ, I hope after I publish it, you put in the comments of the deck, like, how it worked and what you found out as you played and stuff.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
No, I appreciate it. I would never waste your time. I'll definitely comment on it.
Yeah, like and favorite too. Come on, I gotta beat C-Stan. He's got like triple my Rings DB cred. What is that?
I find him a lot on there. Yeah,
I know he's a machine.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask. The other part of this is, I wouldn't assume do it right now, but at some point, I'd like to see, like, you build a deck, and then we can try these decks out together at some point in the future.
Ooh, that would be awesome. Let's see. I'm just naming this something so I don't forget. So you would play Haldir and I'd play something else? Oh, man, I don't know.
Yep. Establishing dominance as the new player.
A typical lone wolf. All right.
Yes, exactly.
Gotta be the dominant male, the alpha.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. I absolutely love playing this game with new players because we've talked about this on the show. It's and I said it I think earlier. It's hard as a veteran to remember as a new player what I didn't understand that now I just innately know. And when a new player is playing with me, they always you did it multiple times during this deck build where you mentioned something. I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's a great point. You know, that's a great thing to talk about that I didn't even think about needing to mention. So yeah, let's do it. I would definitely. So I think we should build a deck together that is Spirit. Maybe after you play with your buddies, you could look at the Spirit deck that was brought to the table, and maybe we could take a shot at seeing what to do with that deck.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds great. I'm totally down. It'd be an honor to team up with you.
Woohoo!
I figured that'll help me further understand, and then I can relay that information to others, and just kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah. No, this was great. I really enjoyed this. It's a topic we always hem and haw about talking about on the actual podcast, but it's so hard to build decks when there's no visual.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm I search out, like, I rush home after work and I look all the time. And I'm just like, yeah, these deck guides are from a perspective if you know all the cards or you know
Yeah.
most of the cards. But if you don't, it's just like so daunting.
Yep.
And I still did it because that's not an excuse, but there you do get bogged down after a while.
Yep.
So no,
Yeah.
this was amazing.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Using the card filter is a huge thing. So K is the trait.
Okay.
So if you click on filter help and then K, so you go K colon and then whoops, Dunedain, and then you gotta make sure you're in the allies so you actually find them.
Yeah.
Okay, go away.
Yeah.
Go away. There you go. So there would be the tactics Dunedain. So at least you can save yourself from scrolling through everything.
Right. Alrighty.
Yeah. And then the sets as well. Holding control and unclicking anything you don't own. And if you let's see, did I save this yet? Okay, I don't want to do this because I don't want to accidentally screw it up. But if you go to sets and then you shift click on something, it deselects everything except for the one you just clicked. So if you have a very small collection, that's an easy way just to click the sets you have, because you shift click on the core set and it deselects everything else. And then you can just quickly click, like, I have all the starter decks and the Amair. So boom, 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 and you just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. I was in a weird spot when I found out about the game. So I'm doing all this research. I'm like, okay, I know I have core set, I had Agmar, and I had Casa Doom. But I also, in the back of my mind, knew that I had gotten lucky and I had bought this guy's collection. And like I said, he had so I was like,
Yep.
in 5 days, I'll have all these other cards. So I'm like trying to build for the play session that we had coming up.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I have this looming just mountain of cards. So yeah, it was a mix.
Yep, totally understandable. I think if people are in your situation, one of the things I would do is I would look at the starter decks on Rings DB, and then I'd be like, okay, well, what dwarves aren't in this deck? Because you have them all. And so you could search by the dwarf trait and just read some dwarf cards and be like, oh, that'd be cool to add in. Let me find that in this mountain of cards. But at least, you know it exists at that point, and you started somewhere. You had a starting place. Like, okay, I'm probably going to include 40 of these 50 cards in this deck, but let's see what else I could add in here for fun.
Yeah, no, we're definitely gonna do that. Like I said, my buddy, he took a liking to the dwarf starter deck, so he's having a blast just finding more and more cards. So
that's awesome. I introduced this game to a buddy and I gave him the dwarf starter as well, because it is a blast to play. I modified it from the one they had. I think I added. Now I can't remember the heroes. I can't remember the heroes in the dwarf starter. But anyway, I changed it just with the dwarf cards, but I swapped out the heroes.
Yeah.
I swapped one hero for another. I think I added Nori.
Nori, yeah.
Okay.
He's really good, yeah.
And anyway, his turn one was one of those turn ones where he ended up with like 6 allies on the table in turn one, thanks to like a very good tail and everything. And he's just like, he's like, this game is easy.
Right.
I'm like, you're playing dwarves.
Right.
I gave you that deck on purpose so you would have a good time.
Yeah, no,
I'm over here playing Gondor and I played a shield, It's like, all right.
Right. Yeah, my buddy played, at one point he had 15 dwarves out.
Yeah.
We were all just cracking up. We almost ran out of table space because he kept playing allies.
Did you do the thing where he'd engage an enemy and then you go, do you need any help? Or,
Yes.
You got it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be a close call. Got a real barn burner going over here.
Well, so he'd lose a guy. I was all sad for him. He's like, "Oh no, it's fine, dude." And then he'd play like 6 more.
These dwarves are like rabbits. Don't worry about it. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Yeah. So I'm used to like Warhammer dwarves or like Blood Bowl dwarves that are like super tanky.
Right.
So I was like, "Oh man, you lost him." He's like, "No, dude, this is not the same."
It's fine.
I was like,
I'll be fine. All right. Well, cool. And it's my lunch break is over, so this is good timing. This is a great way to spend my lunch. I really enjoyed this.
Well, I didn't want to steal your lunch away from you, but
No. I ate before I made a fake meeting on my. Hopefully, no one from work listens to this. I made a fake meeting and ate lunch during that time on my calendar.
What a legend! What a legend! Oh man, yeah. Thanks a ton. I'll definitely be in touch, and maybe in a few days or whatever, you and I can play.
That would be wonderful, TJ. I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun for me as well.
Yeah, dude. Enjoy the rest of your day, and like I said, I'll be in touch. I can't wait to play. I'm gonna copy the deck as soon as we hop off. So,
all
I'm
right,
excited.
that sounds great. All right, well, take care, TJ, and thanks everybody for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye bye.